Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. I am John Schmeelk, joined by Madelyn Burke. A lot of guests coming your way today, folks. We're going to have Art Stapleton, our good friend, leading this off from The Record. We're going to have Dane Brugler today. We're going to have Chris Trapasso from CBS Sports and Sam Bruchhaus doing some free agency from our folks over at Sumer Sports. So let's get right into it. We had Joe Schoen talk today to the media, Art, Madelyn, and he said a lot without saying a ton in terms of really giving you details. But I think, Art, the way I'll open it up with you is that he clearly, I think his goal here was to let everyone know the Giants are open for business in terms of finding a quarterback, and they're going to attack this in every possible way in terms of finding one, whether it's a guy in free agency, a guy in the draft, both. But the really focus seems to be on, look, we got to win more games this year.
Yeah, I mean, and that sets up an interesting dynamic going into the season. I mean, you remember at the end of the season, Joe Schoen was asked directly, would you make moves because of that pressure, because of that urgency? And he said he's not about throwing Hail Marys. But now, 2 months later, he's not saying that, but he's also embracing the idea that, look, we want to win this year. We need to win this year. So that may create, I don't believe it'll compromise what he wants to do. But look, it does come down to the quarterback. I mean, John Madelyn, when you think about it, we know they need a quarterback. We know they want a quarterback. We know they have to have a quarterback. There's one quarterback on the roster, and he's not even technically on the roster yet, and that's Tommy DeVito. He's got to get extended the exclusive rights free agency tender, which obviously the way Joe Schoen is talking about, he's going to extend, and Tommy's going to accept it. But that was an interesting aspect of it beyond the podium today when we got to meet with Joe separately from the main media contingent here was, to me, there's a pressure to get a quarterback because you don't have one. You are going into free agency and you are going into the draft and you don't have a quarterback on the roster right now. And that is a lot to deal with when knowing you can't say for a fact who is going to be your starting quarterback on day one.
Well, and not just pressure to get a quarterback, but pressure to get a quarterback room. As you mentioned, Tommy DeVito, the only guy who currently is in the mix there. Joe Schoen talked about it in his media availability, saying, yeah, we want to draft a rookie and get a veteran, whatever that pairing may be, whether it's a more seasoned veteran and a more developing rookie, or a rookie that you're looking to kind of go with in the near future, and a veteran to kind of help that room evolve. But one thing I think that stood out is that he said he's not afraid to take a big swing because the quarterback is such an important position. What did you make of those comments?
Yeah, I think he's essentially saying, like John said, saying a lot without saying much. And, we all know let's talk the elephant in the room, the Matthew Stafford rumors. And, it's funny, it's a fine line because the Rams gave teams permission to talk to Stafford's representatives to talk about a potential extension, and then they could go back to the Rams and kind of set a market. But, Joe walked that line and said, look, you can ask the Rams about Matthew Stafford. He's a player in a contract for another team, but that is out there. And the idea is also the draft. Will he move up for a quarterback? And I think that...
I should note, just real quick, Art, he did note that age and cost is not something that would stop him in the veteran quarterback market. He was very clear about that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the dynamic at play here is that, we all know they need a quarterback. They have a bunch of different balls in the air right now, and Joe Schoen is juggling things that they don't have the answers to, and they're all interconnected. If you make a big trade and give a Matthew Stafford a contract that's been rumored around $50 million annual per year, now however that works out salary cap-wise for his new team, all are hypotheticals. They live in a world of hypotheticals. Then how does that change what you have come draft night for your quarterback? You may not want to take a rookie at number 3. You may want to take a rookie somewhere else in the draft. So it's a very interesting dynamic, like I said, for Joe Schoen to deal with right now, and a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, and I think the timing of this is interesting, and Joe was asked about that too, right?
Yes.
Because the league year opens 2 weeks, well, not the legal negotiating period opens 2 weeks from yesterday. 15 days from now, the league year begins at 4 p.m., 2 Wednesdays from now. And I think the question Joe was asked was interesting. Don't you have to know what you think about these rookies, whether or not you think you can get the one that you want, if there's only one, or if there's two, if you can get either one of them, now so you get the right type of veteran quarterback in free agency or via trade. Because he talked about it. If there's a rookie that you're going to draft that you think can be your guy fairly soon, you want a different type of veteran quarterback than a guy that's going to come in and want to start for 2 or 3 years. So
you're right.
I think them getting in front of these quarterbacks in the next couple of weeks, whether it's with 30 visits or here or both, and doing that quickly is going to be important so you know how you want to operate when you get to free agency.
As you're talking about that, and it didn't strike me this way, but as you're talking about it, it struck me now, is that the Giants have taken different approaches to their 30 visits the last couple of years. There have been years where they went right out of the gates and they took their 30 visits so they can set up for their workouts late. There have also been years, I believe it was 2 years ago, where their guys came in very late in the process and their 30 visits were right up until the deadline in the second week of April. So I think that would lead me to believe that the Giants are going to want to bring in any player that is in consideration for that number 3 pick, whether it's a quarterback or whether it's Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. Those guys are going to be in the building rubbing elbows with the John Schmeelks and the Madelyn Burks of the world.
Oh, they won't be with us.
Well, hey, Joe said they want to see how they interact with everybody in the building.
We'll see guys in the cafeteria occasionally.
Yeah, you just never know where that comes from. But I think that's an interesting point, the idea of there is pressure in the timing between when you could start taking the 30 visits and when you can get your free agents in the building, because that is going to be a puzzle that has to be put together in this quarterback room.
Well, and mentioning the 30 visits, also mentioning just out here at the Combine, what they're able to do in terms of meeting with these players as individuals for significant time, and really for the first time getting to know them as people. I mean, the coaches and the scouting staff has been watching film on these guys, has been attending games from a lot of these prospects, but getting to know the person and how they fit in with the locker room and build with the culture that this organization is putting together is so imperative.
I know Hard Knocks has become a dirty word, not just league-wide, but in the building over at 1925 Giants Drive. But there were some positives that I take out of the Hard Knocks experience and what we got to see as far as their process. To me, the best part about Hard Knocks that speaks volumes about who this franchise wants to be with Shane and Dable at the front was the Combine interviews with Brian Dable, engaged with the quarterback prospects, yes, with the wide receivers to an extent, but with the quarterback prospects, getting them on the board, feeling them out, putting them on the spot, taking the information that he got from the scouts the week prior, using that to their advantage. And I think what's interesting is that Joe Shane talks a lot about the confidence that he has in the way they evaluate quarterbacks. Going back to Buffalo, going to Miami when Dable was in Miami, and things of that nature. It's not as pressurized when you don't take the quarterback.
Right.
You can go through all the particulars and go through the machinations and have your confidence in who you would take. They did that last year. They knew who they would take. They couldn't trade up. They couldn't get the quarterbacks that they wanted. They weren't there. They took Malik Neighbors. They're happy about Neighbors, but they don't know. And I asked Shane about that, and he said, look, the bottom line is we have confidence in our draft. Until you pull the trigger, you're just basically sitting back on what you know.
Right.
You know where you had guys evaluated, and you need to be honest about it. They need to look at guys last year and say, you know what, maybe we had this guy rated too high or not high enough. And I think that is a big part of this now. Now it's time to pull the trigger.
Well, and also, though, quickly, they always evaluate positions like the quarterback position with depth, because it's not just about who you're going to draft that year, but it's also about, like you said, trusting your own evaluation of a player, so that not just in the draft process, but in the free agency process down the road, having your own assessment of who this player is, who they were, and who they could be.
And the one time, though, the only difference is that when you have to put that card in, that guy, your decision is now cast in stone.
Yes.
If they made a mistake in evaluation last year on one of those quarterbacks, nobody knows.
Right.
And that's the difference. And they need to step up. Joe talks about taking the swings. They need to swing the bat this year.
And if they want to get the guy they maybe really want in the draft, they might not be able to wait till 3 to do it.
Yeah.
That might have to be there where they have to make a trade and move up. And I'm interested to see, and we talked to Daniel Jeremiah about this on the Giants Little podcast, which we'll post a little bit later today, whether the cost to move from 3 to 1 is going to be as prohibitive as it has been in past years, Art, for a couple of reasons. One, I don't think any of these quarterbacks are in that blue chip class that the top 3 guys were last year. And on top of that, you're only going 2 spots down, and the Titans would still be able to get one of those 2 elite position players, whether it's Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, if they go down to 3, which would make it more attractive to them.
Right.
So I do wonder, while moving up to 1 usually costs a future 1, if I'm the Giants, that's a red line for me. Knowing, I don't know if you're going to start a rookie quarterback, I don't know what my record's going to be next year. You don't want to be the Panthers, right? Where they trade everything for Bryce Young, then they're picking first overall. So I do wonder if they do have to make that type of trade, if they could get away with not having to move a future 1 to move up 2 spots to that first overall spot.
Now you'll have Dane Brugler on after me. I met with him a little while ago to do my own podcast that's coming out tomorrow. Or no, later today.
Where do you find that, by the way, just so people know?
You can find it on the NorthJersey.com YouTube page. I'll put out all the links on our social media. Thank you very much, John and Madelyn.
All in with Art Stapleton.
There you go. But Dane said he thought the price would be 2 third-round picks. That's where he thought, now maybe something sweetening the pot.
I was thinking 2 2s. That's kind of where I was at with it.
And Dane said that if you're the Giants, and it's a very interesting aspect, let's say you take the swing for Matthew Stafford. It doesn't come back. He goes back to the Rams. It's not happening.
Yeah.
Okay, they know that. Free agency, they have one of the veterans they like. I'll throw it out there. Let's say they sign Russell Wilson. Met with him last year. Obviously, the price is different this year than it was last year. But you know what? We think Russ could come in, hold the fort. Well, it's not going to be exorbitant amount of price. So now you're looking at it going, as John said, even still, you can't sit there at 3. You cannot sit there in 3 and say, well, we'll just take either Cam or Shador, and if they're not there, then we'll just... No, you've got to pay the price to go up to 1. So to me, we're going to know. Mm-hmm. We're going to know early April, I think, because of what they do in free agency and when the evaluations are complete on their end. They're going to trade. If they're going to take a quarterback, they're going to trade up to number 1. That, in my mind, it's very rare if they're going to sit at 3 unless the Titans or the Browns tell them they're taking the quarterbacks, and then now you're dealing with a different aspect of the whole thing. So
yeah.
I do think if they're going to take a quarterback, it's most likely going to happen with a trade up to number 1 to just erase any doubt. There is no doubt. There are no crazy things at the last minute. Mm-hmm. You don't know what the other 31 teams, you think you know, but all of a sudden Las Vegas says, we got to get Shador,
right?
And he's your number 1 on your board, whether he is or he isn't. And Vegas makes that draft night decision and leapfrogs you, and you're sitting there at 3 going, it would have cost us a 2 and a 3. I don't think that would have been able to.
Right, because like you said, you can assess what the Titans and the Browns are going to do, but the rest of the league might just jump in there, especially with this year's draft, which seems like there's such a lack of consensus over who the top prospects is, the top 3 prospects are, the top 5 prospects are, which I think kind of contributes to why teams are more willing to be malleable with their draft position, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. Art, good stuff, my friend. Always a pleasure.
John,
All in
Madelyn,
podcast.
thank you
Check
very
it out.
much.
Art Stapleton.
Art Stapleton.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck the rest of the week. All right, we'll take a quick time out. Dane Brugler from The Athletic will join us next right here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Stay with us.
All right, Sean, we got 335 max base. We got X post, okay? Here's the
check,
post signal. I gave you the post signal. Give me a good fake right behind me.
Richie, I got you.
All right, white 18. All right, this side. Oh, right there. Oh, he goes. He looks.
He's open. Go get it. Go get it.
Oh! Let's go! It's the post route! Let's go!
That was awesome. Great route. Money. That was money. I think it just scattered.
Yes!
Oh, that was awesome.
Let's go.
Woo! You want to go for it?
Across the line.
All right, we're back here on Big Blue Kickoff live from the Combine in Indianapolis, brought to you by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. John Schmeelk, Madelyn Burke. Friend of the program, Dane Brugler from The Athletic. How's the Beast going?
It's ongoing, right? Look, this week's so important, to get. There's so much information that comes out of this week, and not just the testing, but every single meeting I have with, whether it's with a scout or a coach or someone else that's, whether it's sports science, or there's so many different people here in Indianapolis this week that I get more out of this week than any other week during the year in terms of information for the Beast. And as we try to get this draft class right, we try to collect as many puzzle pieces and put them together, and this week's so important for all that.
So Art Stapleton gave us a little preview of what you said to him on his podcast. He was just with us.
Okay.
And it surprised me a little bit. You said the price, no, that's not a bad thing, that because that's going to be better for the Giants if you're right, that the price to move up from 3-1 this year might be as little as 2 3s. I thought it would be more like 2 2s. You don't have to give him a future one, something like that. I'm just curious, how did you kind of, and how are you thinking about what the price might be to move from 3-1? Because I said to Art, I don't think the price is going to be a future one.
No.
Because the Titans can still get one of those 2 premier position players at 3, which that's kind of the goal here. You don't move far enough down. You get a little bonus to move down 2 spots.
Right.
So just how are you thinking about what that move might cost and what the thought process for both teams is kind of going into that?
And obviously, I think one team's going to be viewed as a little more desperate than the other. But with the Titans, you have a first-year general manager. Who knows? There's some unknown with this. It absolutely might be. Maybe we split the difference. Maybe it's a 2 and a 3.
Right.
We'll kind of see how it plays out. We can look at past examples of what it's take to move up to the first pick, but every year is so unique. This year, especially if it's a team or like the Giants moving up just 2 spots, that matters. The fact that this quarterback class is, it is what it is. It's there's promise in there, but it's not like it's nothing close to last year. So there's all these factors that play into it. Maybe it's a 2 and a 3, but I agree with you. It's not going to be a first-round pick. That's not what. Maybe the Titans try to hold feet to the fire and say, we're not going to do it. I think the Giants are in a position where they say, all right, we'll hold off on that. We don't feel like we need to make that move. But what are the Raiders making an offer? What other teams are going to be into this mix?
And that might cost them going from 6 all the way up.
That's where it is, yeah. And if I'm the Titans, I'm the Browns, I'm giving off the vibes that I'm taking a quarterback. Whether or not I am or not, the vibes I'm giving are I'm taking a quarterback. So
and both those teams have need at the position.
Exactly, it's not a stretch that they wouldn't.
Right.
Exactly. So.
Well, and as you put the Beast together, which is the most comprehensive breakdown of all of the prospects in this draft class, it's got to be interesting too, because as I look around the league at mock drafts and assessments of projections of who's going to go where, there's no real agreement on not just who the top player is, but even that top of that board. Mm-hmm. Do you see after this week kind of a clear picture of that, or is it because, like you mentioned, the quarterback class isn't as marquee as perhaps other quarterback classes are? There's no clear differentiating talent this year. Is somebody going to differentiate themselves in that way, or is it kind of like a dealer's choice here?
I think teams are hoping that maybe somebody, or the players that you think are the top of the top players, they test like that. They come out of this week just because that's what the combine is. It's a one big cross-checking exercise. You don't come to Indianapolis necessarily and completely change your opinion on a guy, but you're looking for him to confirm what you thought coming in, because all the tape's been watched. Teams, they've had their draft meetings where they've built preliminary boards, so they have expectations coming into the week. I think it's just one of those draft classes that is. It's going to be a little more scattershot. It's going to be a little bit more all over.
Does that make it harder to approach a draft when it's a draft class like that?
I guess I should say it makes it harder because I'm supposed to know, right? I'm supposed to, but I find it fun.
It's also more fun. I was about to say that.
Yeah.
It's like, honestly, if I go 0 for 32 on my final mock draft, that means it was a fun draft. That means that on draft day, on draft night, there were some surprises. There were some picks that maybe we didn't see coming. There were some trades. And I'm all for that because at my heart, I'm a draft fan. And so, it's the ultimate reality show where teams don't know what's going to happen, and so we all see it play out together. on draft night, and we're still 2 months away from that. So there's still a lot we're trying to figure out, and hopefully the combine helps us get a little bit closer.
There are going to be multiple Cole Strange moments in this first round.
No
there
doubt.
just are. Like,
No
there's
doubt.
one team's going to have a guy at 50, another one's going to have him at 12, and we're going to figure out where these guys are going to go. I think, it's
I
gonna be
think
a lot
that
of
is
fun.
in my opinion, there's top 2 guys with Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, whatever order you have them, and then 3 to 12, I think, are pretty. Like if one team might have one guy at 3, for another team he's the 10th guy, and then after that, 13 to 45 to 50. I think that's fair. That's a fair range. So we're going to see a lot of variance from team to team.
Well, when we
And
think
just
about last year at
I
Combine.
want to follow up with them real quick, man. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
And I think it's funny, like that group from 3 to 13 last year would probably be more like 12 to 25 or
Right.
15 to 28, right?
Right. Yeah, I think that's fair. And every draft has its own identity.
Yeah.
And let's remember too that like teams evaluate differently too. Like this. Like I have to do my job from a very general standpoint. I'm not scouting for a specific scheme or culture or whatever. Where teams aren't necessarily like that. The Giants might only have 140 players on their draft board.
Right.
Like who knows what that's going to look like. But it will be interesting when you're the Giants and you're picking at 3, and you have a very defined set of needs, and how that will affect how things play out. So yeah, it's going to be interesting the next month as we go through free agency, potential trades. Anything happen there with the Giants quarterback situation, and then that'll give us better clarity for what they might do going into draft night.
Well, in hindsight is always 2020 with draft night, right? You look at Michael
Sure.
Penix and how much everyone gasped when the Falcons stretched for him at 8, and then how much that has seemingly worked out.
Bo
so
Nix
far.
at
Bo
12,
Nix,
yeah.
also another guy who kind of came onto the scene this time of year last year, and at a point during this season was really in Rookie of the Year consideration.
Yeah.
So a lot of Giants fans and kind of NFL fans are hyper-focused on Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders in this quarterback class. But you look at a guy like Jackson Dart, who's really stood out in recent weeks, and or Jalen Milroe, or that next tier of quarterbacks. Are there traits about those guys that stand out that you think, okay, this could be the Bo Nix of this year's draft class?
I think Jackson Dart might get that Bo Nix bump, and that's kind of what I've been calling it. And I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think that teams are going to be looking for that next Bo Nix, where a lot of people around the league, not just those of us on the outside, but teams saw Bo Nix go 12 and were like, wow, like
Right.
that's surprising. But you know what? Sean Payton, he knows what he was looking for in a quarterback, and that's a big factor in all this. But I just don't know that this class has a Bo Nix. I don't know, and maybe other people disagree. But with Jackson Dart's a good player. I like the tools. Like the school. You talk to the school about his competitiveness, and they just rave about the guy that he is, the leader that he is. But coming from that offense where it's play action heavy, it's kind of a lot of one reads, drop my eyes, and I'm gonna take off. I just think running an NFL offense is going to be a big jump for him, and so. Even though he's a senior, I still think it's going to take time for him to acclimate to an NFL offense. And it's not that he can't do it; it's that he's unproven doing it.
He hasn't been asked to do it yet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and that makes an evaluation tough. And then that's where the combine comes in, where
Right.
you put him on the whiteboard, you watch tape with him, and you just trying to figure out, okay, what does he know, what doesn't he know, what makes him tick, how does his thought process, does he have the mental capacity for this? I'm a big Tyler Shuck fan from Louisville. People are going to get stuck on the fact that he's 25 years old, and I get that. I'm not saying he's going to go first round, but on day 2, yeah, I'd roll the dice on Tyler Shuck. He has as much talent as anybody in this class in terms of the size, the mobility, the arm strength. The ball explodes off his hand. And if I'm drafted, the medicals have to check out. He missed a lot of time, 7th-year senior. But as long as the medicals are fine, I don't care about the age on day 2. Who cares? There are benefits to him being a little bit older, where he's more mature.
More
he's,
reps.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I mean, he did miss a lot of time, but he is experienced on the field and off the field. And so that what was the common thread last year of Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix? 5th-year seniors, 5-year starters in college.
And Penix, by the way, too.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so guys that were ready to hit the ground running when they got their opportunity. So I think there's a little bit of that with Cam Ward, who, was one of the most encouraging things about Cam Ward is the fact that, wing T quarterback in high school, and then you see what he did at Incarnate Word. He led the FCS in passing touchdowns both of his years at Incarnate Word. So played well, but then also how much better you got at Washington State, and then how much better you got at Miami. So the progression gives you optimism that, yeah, he's a player we like right now, but 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we're going to like him even more because of how much growing he still has left to do.
Last one on me from the quarterbacks. When you talk to people around the league, how close, in your opinion, are Ward and Sanders with the way teams think about those two players? My feel is that people think Ward probably is a little bit more of a ceiling than Sanders does.
No doubt.
And just how do you think the league is looking at these guys in terms of, we've compared them to last year's class maybe, but even looking ahead to future years, right, with the quarterbacks that are coming down the road, how are teams viewing these guys and how much different are they seeing them? Because I think people were kind of treating them as replaceable, like, oh, you pick Ward or Sanders, but is that how the
very
league
different
is?
skill sets.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Is that how the
And
league's
very
thinking
different
about
builds and very different, yeah.
That's why I don't think the Giants, for example, are going to go into this draft saying, if we don't get our quarterback A, we'll take quarterback B. Like, I just don't see. I don't see it happening. There's enough differences between these guys that you have to come away with this draft with your quarterback A, whoever that may be. I mean, I think Cam Ward is clearly the better prospect myself. If I look at Shedeur Sanders through the prism of 25th pick, potential starter, I'm good with that. Drafting him top 3 overall, that's where I struggle with Shedeur Sanders. I just don't see that caliber of prospect. But I think you're absolutely right about teams looking forward. I think it's why we saw 6 quarterbacks go top 12 last year. Teams look forward to this draft, and we're like, let's get our guy now. Let's roll the dice now. It's tough because I talk to mainly scouts, and so I know how scouts feel about these quarterbacks, and most have a clear gap between Ward and then whoever they have next. It's not always Sanders. But once GMs get involved and once coaches get involved, that can skew things,
and owners, by the way.
No, drafting a quarterback in the top 10 is an owner pick.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. So those factors make it tough to figure out exactly how a team like the Giants or a team like the Raiders or any of these other quarterback needy teams are going to look at these quarterbacks, because the GM, the head coach, the owner, that all changes the math a little bit.
I get that. And I mean, we're so focused, too, on quarterback, rightfully so. The Giants have one, really, in the room, Tommy DeVito. So they need not only a rookie, but a veteran also. They need to build that room. But say they don't. Say they don't go quarterback with that first-round pick. Say for some reason they pivot to a Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. But Travis Hunter is a fascinating prospect to me. Like, I know he's coming into the combine as a cornerback. Some people thought he might go wide receiver because the money associated with the position. But really coming into this process as a corner, what do you make of Travis Hunter? What a unique prospect he is, and how he would translate to the league?
Yeah, and honestly, I wouldn't look too much into the fact that he's listed as a corner, because NFL teams are going to ask him to work out of both positions.
Sure.
I have no doubt about that, and I have no doubt that he wants to play both positions. So, if I'm an NFL team, first step is just talking to him and getting an understanding from him. Hey, where do you want to play? If he has his heart set on playing offense, that changes things a little bit. You have to respect what the guy wants. Especially if you're drafting using a top 3 pick on him. But ideally, I'm selling him on the idea of you're going to be a full-time corner, and we're going to have 25 plays on offense for you every game, 8 to 9 touches. You're going to impact the game in a big way doing that, while still preserving your body and not making you be in receiver meeting rooms all day.
Well, and that's another point, too. I was talking to some coaches about him just positionally.
Yeah.
And coming into the NFL, it's not just about on the field how tired your legs are going to get.
It's the mental commitment.
And it's the meeting rooms. Are you in offensive or defensive meetings?
At the same
you
time.
Exactly. You can't be in both places. Which playbook are you focusing on? What do you learn?
That's
And
the
what's
most
easier
impressive
to pick
thing
up?
about what he did at Colorado is the mental commitment to, and he played special teams too. He had to be involved in so many different areas of the playbook to know what is going on, that I don't think people understand. Yeah, the athletic part of it is impressive, but the mental capacity to know what you're doing in all those situations is unbelievable. And that's why it's rare. We don't see guys do that, aside from the physical component.
Yeah.
But if anybody can do it, it's Travis Hunter.
All right, final one, time for one more, Dane. There are more than one round of the draft, so we should ask about the second and third round. We know defensive line and edge, super deep. If you want one at the top of the second round, that's a great place to get it. How about corner? That's another big need for the Giants. Can you find a corner on day 2 that you think can step in, play outside specifically, not a slot guy, and come in and be a help? Or, see, that face wasn't a confident one where you feel great about it. So I'm curious, how about that defensive backfield if you're trying to find that spot? And if not there, what might be another spot besides the defensive front where you can find some value on day 2?
Look, almost every year, wide receiver and corner are 2 of the deepest positions because there's so many of them. This year, it's a little bit of the opposite, where we don't have as many receivers and corners that I think are true top 100 guys, no doubt about it, starters. Do you have any favorites on day 2 at corner? There's some okay players, but none that I think are really blow you away in that respect.
A lot of guys are projections.
No doubt, yeah. I mean, if I can get Siobhan Ravel on day 2, I love that. I mean, I'm a big fan of his.
Like Porter from Iowa State could be like a round 3 guy, but he's a projection. You like the length and the speed, but the tape.
Yeah, I mean, 6-year senior, and it took till his final 6th year to.
Exactly.
And he wasn't even a full-time player on defense. Why not? But he's a guy that will blow up this week with the way his speed. He holds the Iowa State record in high school for the 400 meters. He's a pretty impressive athlete. It's just, it's usually we have too many receivers and corners to talk about this year. It's one of those years.
Tight ends and running backs great. Receivers and corners not so much.
Exactly. Running back is so deep. Tight end is really deep. Defensive line is deep. Those 3 positions, you feel good going into round 4, into day 3. There'd be a lot of different options.
Dane, always a pleasure, my man.
Pleasure's all mine.
Go back into the car wash,
much.
and you got more people looking to talk to you, and then enjoy the workouts, and we'll talk to you later in the process.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Good luck with the Beast. Dane Brugler from The Athletic. Of course, check out the Beast that comes out beginning of April. Is the goal as always?
Hopefully.
Yeah. First week of April. Make sure you go check it out. We'll be back with Sam Bruchhaus from Sumer Sports when we return.
It's a thread.
A love affair. I fell in love with the Giants. I saw LT run the touchdown back when they played the Detroit Lions.
Pass down. Phil Simms was my dad's guy.
From generation,
Eli was my guy. To generation.
we are
The New York Giants.
We got some cilantro, some onions, some carrots.
Giving back to the community means a lot. Just to keep giving hope that, you just live in a situation, the situation doesn't define you.
I got you.
Thank y'all.
You're welcome.
Seriously. This is so nice of y'all.
Thank you.
Just little things like that just to keep encouraging guys.
3, 2, 1, look up. You got to get patted up. Let's do it.
Wow, what a catch! Ridiculous!
All right.
All right.
I'll show you my arrow. This is my bedroom.
I'm leaving? Yeah.
NFL Combine, John Schmeelk, Madelyn, Burke. We welcome in Sam Bruchhaus from analyst at Sumer Sports. Is that the best way to?
That's the best way to go out. I'm crunching numbers and I'm talking ball. That's all that I do.
All right. So first of all, tell us about Sumer, what you guys are doing, and how you're trying to kind of help NFL teams and also fans and media people understand the game.
Yeah, the idea of Sumer is that football is not necessarily money ball. It's not one number. So we have a full scouting team headed up by our president, Thomas Dimitroff, former general manager of the Atlanta Falcons, and then we have a full analytics and machine learning team that is building AI tools to represent film and represent the game of football using numbers. And we bring those together, and we bring a lot of great insights to the public and a lot of great insights to NFL and college teams.
That's interesting, and that's got to be fascinating to kind of take all that data and translate it into something usable. When you look at a team like the Giants, which is obviously what we're here for, how do you kind of quantify something that they should be focusing on based on your research?
Well, you like to look at the level of player and in particular, how much production they're getting out of them, but you're also looking at how players are aging or injuries and stuff like that, and you try to do that on a play-by-play basis, and we do have artificial intelligence, which does in fact do that, and I think the answers for this coming off season is you have to address the offensive line and you have to address the defensive backfield. Now, there's varying ways of doing that, free agency versus not free agency, the draft, and different positional values, but that seems to be the questions that the Giants have to answer this year.
Well, we've talked a lot about the draft, so let's talk about free agency. Because that comes before the draft.
Right.
Not as important, in my opinion, but it comes before, so that's kind of how you have to set the stage for the rest of your offseason. Yeah. When you're the Giants, you're coming off a 3-win year.
Right.
You do have some premium players at spots, right? Dexter Lawrence, really good player. Brian Burns, really good player. You think Malik Neighbors is going to be a really good player. But it just didn't come together last year. They have, depending on where the cap lands, $40, $50 million to spend. You can restructure some contracts of good players, create more space if you want. How would you go about your approach in terms of the tier of players? Are you looking to get another 20 million plus guy like they did with Burns last year? Is this more of a filling holes situation type of offseason to get solid starters? Given what the class looks like in free agency, which is not one of the better ones we've seen in recent years, how would you approach this free agency class if you're Joe Schoen and the Giants?
So I think you take a very express positional look at it. And the reason why you do that is because in history, typically the top 15 guys as rated by their contract values, the market values on these guys, the top 15 guys at the interior offensive line positions and the safety and the linebacker positions are typically guys that you can go out and get a great player in free agency, and those will cost you, anywhere between $5 and $15 million typically. And we've seen people be really successful with attacking those positions, which analytically are very hard to predict year over year, particularly the linebacker and safety position, and have success immediately. Great example this year: Zach Bond, Eagles; Kevin Zeitler, who was with the Lions. Guys that they just kind of picked up, immediately made an impact. And I think that's the way, particularly given the interior offensive line help that the Giants need. I mean, I was going down the list of guards and centers that you can pick up, and 5 to 6 of those guys were at some point in the year in contention for a true Pro Bowl spot. There's always questions in free agency. Age. You look at a guy like Trey Smith. That's going to be a massive contract. I don't know if that would be a smart move for the Giants to make, but you start looking at guys 3, 4, 5, Will Freeze from the Colts, other guys like that. And these are really good players that can immensely make an impact. A great example of this, Carolina Panthers. Everyone may look at their year and think, not the best year of all time, but you start looking at Bryce's progression and the way that offense started to click, and the idea that Chuba Hubbard is now one of the better running backs. And a lot of that is because they went out in free agency, signed 2 really good guards, spent their money there. Then all of a sudden, Bryce isn't getting pressured up the middle. All of a sudden, the holes are a little bit bigger for Chuba Hubbard. I think that's a good plan for the Giants to take in free agency, just based off what we've seen in history.
Right. And even Chuba Hubbard had flashes when he was backing up Christian McCaffrey in those moments, but that right opportunity creates that environment. Now, you guys mentioned the salary cap, obviously. We don't have the actual number this year. There's a range, which is helpful, and it's a big jump from where it was, but it's a big jump for everyone. And I think, when Giants fans looking at it from a Giants perspective, they're like, wow, we have all this money to spend. Well, so does everyone else. So that kind of drives up the value of some of these contracts you mentioned that might be, 5 to 15 in a year prior, but when everyone's got more money to spend, they make it more valuable, right?
It's very interesting, and I think from the team side, and I was just in New Orleans right before the Super Bowl. At Tulane every year, they have a negotiation competition, and it's basically like all the cap guys and agents come in from around the country and get together. That's our little conference.
Okay.
And so the team guys are always like, well, the market's the market. The cash is king.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm paying you $1 million extra, I'm still paying you $1 million extra. But you made a great point. They have to spend the money according to the CBA. And so the agents are always like, well, no, you got to spend the money. The percentage of the cap makes a big difference. I think there's a few key items to look at when these deals do come out. I think the percentage of the cap is one of them. If there is a deal like Trey Smith, who's probably going to be $25 million, maybe just under that.
And it creates a bidding war, too, because people have more spending.
Exactly. But then you look at it in terms of the percentage of the cap that they realistically have to spend. It's not that crazy of a contract. The second thing is APY versus guarantees and when you can get out of the contract mean a lot. And you see teams like the Eagles, you see teams like the Commanders have started doing this as well. 49ers do this from time to time, who have all these triggers and clauses and stuff like that so they can get out of these contracts. And I think it's very key to not get caught up in the APY of it all and really look at the guarantees and the flexibility of the contract.
Or the teams doing void years or things like that and moving them to the future. Precisely. Yeah.
I think the general idea from people are that the top of the market in free agency is a dangerous place to play. You guys that are older, health becomes an issue.
Yep.
Is that what your data shows when you're advising these teams on how to attack free agency? That unless you're a team that's ready to win and you think this guy could put you over the top, attacking the top part of that free agency thing is a dangerous place to be?
Yeah, I think it's almost like a parabola, a U-curve. If you're have a ton of rookies, young guys, you're not really in a spot to win now, maybe go spend it and try to get an advance on that. I mentioned the Panthers, they're a team that did that. And then if you're really good and you can go out and get a quality player at a non-premium position that puts you over the hump, maybe you want to do that. But in the middle, it's very difficult to do that. And coming back to positional value, the reason why is those positions, the quarterback position, the edge rushing position, the tackle position, are valuable for a reason. And that is because they're hard to find, and when they are found, it's in the draft, and the teams don't let them leave.
The best guys never become available. That's why they had to trade it too, just to get access to Brian Burns.
Exactly.
Right.
And so you think about Brian Burns, a great example. He ended up getting traded. Malik Neighbors, probably not, if history is telling us something. He's probably going to be in a Giants jersey for quite a long time, just because that level of wide receiver does not generally get out of the building at any given point in time. And so that's kind of the reason why it's dangerous to play at the Trey Smith level, who seems to be the biggest guy. And there's a couple. Byron Murphy's another cornerback who I think is going to be a really dangerous guy to play around with, particularly because he was in that Flores system that kind of set him up to be a turnover happy player, but he kind of got to freelance a little bit. And so I think that's another guy who may trip some teams up as well. But it's truly a positional value, and I think you evaluate those positions, you evaluate your strengths at them, and you attack them based on where they have been successfully attacked in the past.
Well, you mentioned too, sometimes a talented player doesn't get out of the building,
right,
perhaps until they're at the back nine. You think of, conversations or rumors about Matthew Stafford, perhaps. Yep. And yes, he is a Super Bowl winning, talented quarterback, 37 years old, often injured. There's a little bit of a give and a take there. The number that a Matthew Stafford would command on the quarterback market is quite high. How do you quantify that in a risk-reward scenario from a data point?
Stafford is an excellent and very difficult one to analyze because he has been consistently, even in the last couple of years, one of the better quarterbacks in the league. He's still, a top 15 guy. Mm-hmm. We really dug deep into the metrics, and we wanted to see what happened when Aaron Rodgers fell off, because they're really very similar players on very similar playoff contending teams.
I can see that.
And it feels like a cliff almost, not like a gradual decline.
And so you look at the 21 and 22 seasons from Rodgers, and deep accuracy started becoming a problem for him, and it limited his production a slight bit. And then fast forward to 23 and 24, he's not as active of a player anymore. We kind of saw a similar decline this year, and that's not to say it'll be predictive, but Stafford was a little bit less productive. He was a little bit more inconsistent, and in particular, his long accuracy, which he's been excellent at his whole career, started dipping. So I think you have to approach Stafford like a, quote, bridge quarterback.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to do that because
at that price point,
number one, cash is king. He's taken some team-friendly deals with his buddies Les Snead and Sean McVay. He's going to want to get paid at the top of the league this year. $50 million in cash this year, probably. And so that's a tough one to go to. You can get busy with the cap, and you can do it over 2 or 3 years or try to figure out how do you manage it. But it's just a tough investment when you're investing in a 38-year-old quarterback.
Well, and how much of a variable, quickly, though, in that Aaron Rodgers comparison is the essentially year he missed with the Achilles injury? Because I think if you're starting to dip in production and then you take that much time away from the game, it could assist it going down a cliff rather than if you're consistently playing.
Cousins too, right, with the Achilles.
Cousins
same deal.
too, yeah.
And I think that's just the name of the game when you're 38 and getting hit by a 22-year-old, 400-pound running 4.2s.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a tough go of it. I'll look at some of these guys that we've been talking about all day today that are playing defensive tackle, defensive end in this draft. And if I was 38 and had played 20 years, I don't know if I would want to get hit by them either. And I think we've only seen one player really be able to be healthy, and that's Tom Brady. And even at the end there, he was not wanting to get hit. The ball was coming out quick. It looked a lot like Rodgers this year as well. And I think the book is kind of out on that, and you're either going to have one pop-up season like Brett Favre had many, many years ago, or Tom Brady had in the Super Bowl season, but it's going to be a lot of that more conservative, careful, less long throws, less long accuracy with the arm. And I think that's what you just have to expect if you're going into a transaction with Matthew Stafford as another team other than the Rams.
All right, final question, then we got to roll. Anybody that you specifically like in this free agency class that you think can really provide, and you mentioned Will Freeze already as one, as really give you good bang for the buck on this free agent market, that you think teams maybe their value isn't estimated as high as it should be on a production per dollar type of value?
So I think the safety market is a very strange and unpredictable one because people ask safeties to do a lot of different things. And I think Hufanga from the 49ers is a certified all-pro talent. There's just a lot of risk of if he's going to be on the field. And I think if you are looking for a bargain bin, I haven't heard really anyone label him as one of the best free agents available. This guy was on an all-pro team 2 years ago. Like, this year, when he was healthy, completely changed the face of the 49ers defense. When he was healthy in the Super Bowl attendance here, he also changed the whole face. The defense cratered. And I think you put him on a defense, all of a sudden he will be excellent. And I think Tyler Nubin is out there. You put a veteran presence out there. They're both kind of similar players in run defense. Nubin was a little bit more of a free safety at the college level. I think it'd be a great fit for the Giants.
Sam, good stuff, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. Where can they find all your content with Sumer?
Yeah, check me out at Sam Bruchhaus and at Sumer Sports, and mock draft is up, sumersports.com. You know, I think the quarterbacks are just going to go 1 and 2, but we'll see.
Ooh, that's a little spice at the end of the interview. You like that? Sam Bruchhaus from Sumer Sports. Quick timeout. Chris Trapasso from CBS Sports will be our final guest today. We'll wrap things up on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac.
Hey, how are you? Hi. I'm Kayvon. Nice to meet you. For me, it's just a blessing to always be that impact for somebody else. I always say try to be somebody to somebody. So when I go, I want my feet and my hands to move just as fast, right? It's been great getting to learn a lot, getting to meet a lot of kids. It kind of reminds you of where you used to be, and it reminds you of the impact that people have in your life. There you go. I think we had a tremendous impact on them, just being able to bring them a smile on the day and be able to, really interact with them and get to know them. And one more. Hey. Really getting to step back and enjoy the moment.
All right, Sean, we got 335 max base. We got X post, okay? Here's the post signal. I gave you the post signal. Give me a good fake right behind me.
Richie, I got you.
All right, wide 18. All right, this side. Oh, right there. Oh, he looks.
He's open. Go get it. Go get it.
Oh!
Let's go!
It's the post route!
Let's go! Yeah. That was awesome. Great route. Money! That was money. I think it just scattered.
Yes!
Oh, that was awesome.
Let's go.
Woo! You want to go for it?
Across the line.
All right, we're back here on Big Blue Kickoff Live, right here on Giants.com, the Giants mobile app, the Giants YouTube channel as well. We'll be streaming live on the YouTube channel all week long. John Schmeelk, Madelyn Burke, joined by friend of the program, Chris Trapasso from CBS Sports. Chris, what's going on, man?
This is probably my favorite team interview to do every year because you guys normally ask me nitty-gritty prospect stuff. It's where do you have in the mock draft this week? What are you going to do next week? It's like nitty-gritty combine, NFL draft prospect evaluations, which I'm doing, you guys are doing, and all these general managers are doing.
You're going to be happy because we did all the top-of-the-end quarterback stuff with our guest already, so we were going to dig a little bit deeper with it.
We're going to dig a little bit deeper. I think, one thing that stands out to me is this time of year, you've written this as well, that the combine especially is all about traits. I think
100%.
some people get really caught up in the athleticism of a player and say, wow, look how fast he can run, how high he can jump. Some of that translates more than other things to the football field. But how do you focus in and optimize the traits that you're seeing on display at the combine in a football sense?
That's a really good question. I think it's obviously, we all know at this point, it's more than just the 40-yard dash. And to get kind of nerdy about this, it's all about how a player jumps in the vertical, the broad jump, the 3-cone relative to his size. And there's a bunch of sites. Mock Draftable is a great resource that has historical combine data where you can see someone run a fast 40, but if his vertical was not very high and his 3-cone wasn't very good, maybe he's a good linear athlete, but he can't really change directions. Some positions that doesn't matter as much. Other positions, like say edge rusher or running back, it certainly does. So it's not the easiest thing, and I think that's a $1 billion question how to do it perfectly, and teams are trying to do it, but it's looking at the whole picture, looking at the height of a prospect and the weight of a prospect when trying to analyze how they work out here in Indy.
And how they move.
I'm sorry, man. I just want to add on to that because I think it also depends on expectations, right? You walk into this, everyone thinks Travis Hunter is going to run a great time.
That's a great point.
So if he runs a great time, it's okay. Well, that's what it looks like on tape. It's the guys that either run much faster than what their tape looks like or runs much slower than what their tape looks like that I think really makes these evaluators go back to their tape study and evaluation. All right, well, did we get something wrong here? Do we need to think about this again? Because this is all about, to me, meeting expectations week. Do the guys do what you think they're going to do? It's not necessarily the raw number, it's what it looks like.
And to that point, it's like become a cardinal sin in the scouting community to not double count something. Like you're saying, Travis Hunter, we're expecting him to test through the roof. So when he does, you don't have to boost up his speed score or his athleticism score. But what is fun, because I'm like 150 or so guys in, there will be, even for me, a handful of prospects, maybe even up to 10 to 20, that I haven't finalized grades on yet, that will make you go back and say, maybe I do need to watch this player because his athleticism is that of a second or a third round pick, and he came into this week without a lot of buzz.
Well, and also too, oftentimes there's a difference between game speed and straight line running in your underwear speed. Whereas also, every year it seems like there's combine stars, right? People that really test off the charts, but don't actually work out in the league. And so that's kind of a hard thing when you're going in with the confirmation bias or the lack of saying, okay, I'm expecting this, I'm not expecting that from these players. So often people get wowed by, look how many times he benched that, look how fast he ran that. And there's a difference between, Xavier Worthy, who succeeds in the Chiefs, or John Ross, whose record he broke, who didn't have the most successful NFL career. So how do you navigate that?
It's very difficult. What I think is, it's easy to be a draft analyst or be a fan and say, okay, the biggest freaks, we're just going to try to draft them or have them graded high.
Yeah.
You do need to have a baseline of being a quality football player. And I think a lot of the times, and this is with researching the draft over the last decade plus, we have 20 years of official combine data at this point, or actually 25. The players that are just combine workout warriors but really are not great football players, they rarely work out in the NFL. They have to have shown from a production standpoint flashes, at least in their last season or when they were sophomores or juniors, that's their baseline as football players if they're going to ultimately succeed. That's a good rule of thumb going into the draft.
Yeah, and I think for teams, and then we'll start digging into some of these players, they have GPS data that we don't, right? Yeah. So that's not public knowledge. So these teams actually have metrics now on game speed, which we don't have. So I think these 40 times for them become much less important because they literally have data of what these guys are running on the field. Now it gets tricky. Different conferences in college use different systems. Sometimes it tests differently. It's hard to compare them. But at least they do have in-game data on some of this athleticism stuff that this will supplement, but it's not quite as critical.
Based on what you said, and then going back to Madelyn's point, I'll use Tyrone Tracy as a prime example, that he tested absolutely through the roof in the final season at Purdue when he made the full switch to running back. His missed tackle force rate was through the roof. So he got labeled, I think, inaccurately by, I'm not calling out anyone, but overall the consensus was, who is this guy? He was a former receiver at Iowa. Can he really play running back? Yes, he can. His film, the nuanced ability that you wanted to see, being elusive and hitting those breakaway runs was on film, and then he confirmed it with a freaky workout at the Combine, and then he had a great rookie season in New York.
Yeah, and it's harder, too, because some people look at that and think there's such a small sample size of him at the running back position, which, okay, great, he did well for a short time. Can he do it for a long period? The quarterback position is one we've talked about quite a bit today. Yeah. A lot of people focusing on Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders at the top of this draft. You've got some other guys, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, kind of coming through and percolating later on. When you're looking at this position from, a trait standpoint and also just an NFL readiness standpoint, though, Where do you stand? It seems like there's a clearer front runner around the consensus that we've been talking about. Where do you stand in the quarterback?
Yeah, so I think NFL readiness, Shadur Sanders is the one that could come in, or has the best chance to come in and start week 1. And how high is his upside? That's the ultimate question. Here in Indy, you're talking about traits. That's the theme of the week. Does he have the same traits as a Cam Ward? Not quite as good.
Very different physical build, very different.
Totally.
Yeah.
So teams at the top of the draft are going to have to kind of, including the Giants, obviously, the first 3 picks really in the draft are going to have to weigh, do we want someone that we know could be a top 12 to top 16 quarterback and feel good about that? Or do we roll the dice on someone that's maybe a little bit more raw, like a Quinn Ewers or a Jackson Dart, but has better traits that maybe with the right situation around him become a top 7 quarterback in the NFL in the next couple of years?
All right, let's talk day 2 picks. Giants, if they're probably not going to pick a defensive tackle 3rd overall. I mean, you never know.
Mason Graham maybe?
Possible. But if they wait till day 2, they need someone to complement Dexter Lawrence, a defensive tackle. There are so many guys. I mean, I don't even know who's going to be there. But who are some of your favorite early 2nd round, late 1st round, if they drop defensive tackles? And who do you think the Giants should focus on in that spot that can play next to Dexter Lawrence and be his wingman?
Well, I love the idea of Deion Walker from Kentucky to just have 2 absolute
700 pounds worth of defensive tackle.
It would be 700 pounds worth of defensive tackle. And my comp for Deion Walker is like a more raw Dexter Lawrence. Dexter was a more refined pass rusher, was a little more explosive. Like people kind of incorrectly pegged him as just this run stuffer. He was not that. Walker in 2023 was like near the top of college football in pressure, so he can get after it at 6'7", 340.
He was a top 10 pick for me out of 2023.
Me too,
but not in 2024.
Not this year. So teams are going to have to weigh that. I don't know if they would want that much size. They would probably want to complement. Derek Harmon from Oregon reminds me a lot of Daquan Jones. He's been so good in Buffalo. He's a great run stopper, 2-gapper, but can get up the field. C.J. West from Indiana reminds me a lot of Aleem McNeil in Detroit, who when healthy is like a Pro Bowl caliber nose tackle, but it gives you the pass rush ability. And then TJ Sanders reminds me a lot of Danico Autry, who's bounced around the league, can play 5 technique, 3 technique, 1 at South Carolina in the SEC, multiple years of the pass rush productivity that you want to see. So there's 3 or 4 right there that will probably be available. I mean, we'll see with how they test if that changes their range in the draft, but those 3 would probably be available in the 2nd round if the Giants go in a different direction in round 1.
Well, and there's a lot of conversation about how deep the defensive tackle class is in this year's draft. Is there another position that you'd highlight that you think, okay, there can be some value in this one in a day 2 or day 3, some hidden gems?
Running back is good. I don't know if the Giants would want to address that again relatively early. Edge rusher is also really good. And I know Brian Burns is there. I don't think it's ever a bad idea. We saw it in the Super Bowl to just keep piling on the edge rushers. The Eagles have never stopped doing that. Right when we seem like, okay, the Eagles have enough, they don't need any more, they draft another Georgia guy in the trenches. So the edge rusher class, beyond Abdul Carter's, beyond Mikel Williams from Georgia, it's day 2, I think we're going to see a litany of those guys go off the board and be impact guys.
Well, and you mentioned running backs, so obviously not really a position of focus for the Giants, but it's interesting to watch how the narrative around the position has kind of changed. I mean, some teams are like, you can't take a running back in the 1st round, and then some are really eyeing, an Ashton Genty or Omarion Hampton or some of those players and thinking they might be a round 1 guy. Where do you stand on that?
So I literally own a shirt. My wife has an Etsy shop. She makes T-shirts. I had her make me a shirt last year that says, do not draft running backs in the 1st round. I know Saquon Barkley was in New York. He had a great season.
Jahmyr Gibbs worked out. But I think for as much as we had this veteran running back renaissance this year, obviously with Saquon and with Derrick Henry, even Josh Jacobs. Yeah.
You also had Tyrone Tracy in the 5th round, and Bucky Irving in the 4th round, and Chase Brown 2 years ago in the 6th round.
Good point.
Those guys were not drawing as many headlines, of course, as the Derrick Henrys or the Saquons, but I think, to me, the smart teams still understand that maybe you're not going to be able to draft a Derrick Henry in round 4 or 5, but you can still get a quality player if the blocking is good on day 3 of the draft. And this would be a year, if you just wanted to throw another dart at the board and add more to the running back room, this would be the class to do it. It's a good class.
Now, I will say this. I think this year you could see some of those non-premium positions get a lot more play early in the draft because you don't have the number of, maybe we're going to have 15 guys with first-round grades in this draft class, maybe.
It's not a great wide receiver class at the top like last year with Neighbors and Harrison.
It's not a great quarterback class, not a great offensive tackle class at the top, where we had, 8 offensive tackles in the first round last year?
Yeah.
So you're not looking at a bunch of premium guys with first-round grades. So I think when you start looking at the running backs, the tight ends, you already mentioned defensive tackle, right? I could see these non-premium positions being pushed up the board because teams see them as safer picks. All right, maybe they're not going to turn into that $30 million a year offensive tackle, but they're going to be really good starters for us at this spot. They're going to be impact players at a non-premium position, and that's a better move than, going on a 50-50 shot on some wide receiver or corner that you really don't feel that good about.
Yeah, I'm big on positional value in the draft, and I'm obviously just...
And so am I, generally speaking. I'm with you on that.
And I'm just grading like the league in a vacuum. I don't have a team board of needs, which I think will factor in for every team. But that's a good point that I think a lot of clubs, like if Malachi Starks, he's playing safety, Nick Emanwari from South Carolina, if he tests through the roof, he's a safety, you would usually have that lower on the positional value chart.
Even like a Johnny Barron, who's a slot corner, right?
Yes, but if you're getting a quality player, suddenly you can be strong at one of those positions, and it's never a bad idea, even if we're factoring in positional value, to just draft quality, high-end athletes at those non-premium positions.
Well, you mentioned positional value. One position that kind of had a renaissance in value is tight end. I feel like tight ends were the running backs before running backs don't do that. This year's draft class, it seems like there's a lot of receiving tight ends. There's a lot of value in that spot. Where do you rank on those?
Yeah, it's like when I watch these tight ends, I always at the end try to watch them block, and I'm like, none of them can really block, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I am interested and excited about Theo Johnson because of his athleticism was through the roof. I think he had his RAS score was 10 or 9.99 last year. Still, a young player, but this is a class with Terrence Ferguson from Oregon and Harold Fannin from Bowling Green, 2 really good receivers, different types outside of Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. So it's not a tremendous, we're going to see 4 tight ends in round 1, but I think it's a good enough class where in a year or 2, we're going to look back and say, solid contributor here, solid starter there, elite player there. It's a good tight end class at a position, like you're saying, that has had a little bit of a renaissance too.
Chris, good stuff, my friend.
All right, guys.
You can find Chris at CBSSports.com. That's it for Big Blue Kickoff Live today, brought to you by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. We thank Art Stapleton, Dane Brugler, Sam Bruchhaus, Chris Trapasso for joining us. We'll be back with you again tomorrow at 12:30 with some more great guests live on the Giants app, Giants.com, and the Giants YouTube page. For our guests, for Madelyn, I am John Schmeelk. Thanks for being with us. Check out the Giants Huddle podcast as well. We'll have episodes throughout the week, including Daniel Jeremiah coming up later on this Tuesday. We'll see you next time, everybody.